Hi, I'm Andrew Shovlin and I'm here to answer your questions from the Bahrain Grand Prix. Well, it was a huge relief firstly just to see him get out of the car and see that he was relatively safe. It was an enormous accident. The marshals though did brilliantly, and particularly the medical car with Alan, with Ian the doctor. They were on the scene very, very rapidly. It's very rare that you get a fire after an accident like that. The fuel cell is made of Kevlar. That's also protected within the monocoque of the car. So thankfully, it's unusual that we have to deal with accidents of this type. But also it was great to see that some of the recent safety features were able to play a big part in keeping him safe. So in particular, the halo played a big role in that. But also, lesser known, the drivers have a new specification of suit this year. That was an area that that used to be developed to actually make the suits lighter. Recently, they've gone to a heavier, more protective material on those, and there's no doubt that that will have also helped keep him safe in the fire. But as I said, all of us at Mercedes are just hugely relieved that he was able to get out of that largely unscathed. We didn't have a great getaway with Valtteri. Now, he was in P2. That side of the grid, the even-numbered side, gets less running. The cars don't drive there when they're doing their normal laps. So it's not unusual that it's lower grip, but in particular, that P2 spot that he was in looked to be quite bad. Now, in terms of the start itself, there wasn't really any issue. He was targeting a similar amount of torque to Lewis, but with Valtteri, it went to wheel spin, and once you get that wheel spin, you lose a lot of traction. Now, it isn't to say that everyone on that side did a bad start. We saw Ricciardo get away quite nicely, but as I said, the key issue was really the lower grip meant that we broke traction, we went to wheel spin, and then you just lose performance there on in. So quite costly after a good effort in qualifying to put him in that P2 position. It was actually quite a pleasant surprise to us to see that when they formed the grid for that restart, Valtteri had moved from P6 where he was on the suspension into P4. But the reason is they take the position of the cars from the safety car 2 line. So when there's an accident like that and there's a suspension, the FIA are able to take the position of the cars from the point that they can determine it most accurately. And in this instance, it was as they all crossed the safety car 2 line, which is the one that's just on the pit exit. So it was a little bit of a help to a very difficult day for Valtteri. The reason that we only changed 3 tyres was that those tyres were the ones that came from the start of the race. So the ones that Valtteri did the grid start and then he did the restart on. Now, very shortly after the restart, he got a puncture on the front right. And we were running out of tyres as well at this point. We wanted a set of the medium tyres. We'd lost the front right, but the other 3 tyres were in good condition. And that was why we elected to just change those, leaving the front right on the car. As you saw, it was quite difficult for Valtteri to make progress through the field. And some of that was down to the choices that we'd made setting up the car. We decided to go for quite a big rear wing. That gives us more downforce. It's very useful when you're actually trying to keep the tyres in good shape through some of those fast corners. And if Valtteri had had a race at the front like Lewis had, it would have probably been the ideal wing to be on. Now, the issue was when he dropped to the back with that puncture during the safety car period, it meant that he then had the whole field to get through, and he's got this big draggy wing that isn't really very good when you're trying to do overtaking. So it was a bit unfortunate really, but all a result of the puncture putting him to the back. They are the same power unit, so it's not impossible that we would see similar issues. However, it's very unlikely that we're going to see them during that race, sort of in those remaining laps. So we weren't particularly worried for our own car, but what we do need to do is to get the power unit back to HPP at Brixworth. They'll do a very thorough investigation trying to understand what's actually caused the failure, and that is something that we'll need to feature into our programme for the remaining races, make sure that we're comfortable continuing running as we are. But as I said, it wasn't so much a concern for the race in those closing laps, but certainly something that we'll be taking a great interest in going forwards. If the race had resumed, Lewis would have probably been in trouble. So his set was quite old, Max was on fresher medium tyres, and would have certainly been putting Lewis under a lot of pressure. But when we made the decision to stay out, we were effectively certain that the race couldn't restart. The pack is spread out, it needs to form up behind the safety car. They then let all the lapped cars overtake and recover the lap, and realistically, that process isn't going to ever take less than about 4 laps. So we weren't concerned because we knew that the race would finish under the safety car and it wouldn't matter what tyres Lewis had on. The different layout of the circuit definitely affects the setup that we're going to need to run on the car. And principally that's because the section that's missing has a lot of the faster corners. So it will make an effect on where we want the rear ride height, for instance. So as you're at a low speed circuit, you tend to lower the rear ride height. There may be an impact on the wing level that we're wanting to run with the car. And also you're biasing to a much narrower range of corner speeds. They're all low speeds that remain. So there will be some impacts, but some things will also be the same, like it's an aggressive tarmac, it's hard on the tyres, there'll be lots of overheating. So some of the elements of the setup are going to remain, but we'll be doing some fine tuning, just trying to get it suited to the very specifics of that short circuit. We did get an opportunity to run the 2021 tyres, which gives us a bit of a preview of what we're going to have next year. And all teams got 2 sets of these. All teams ran them during the 2 practice sessions on Friday. And really you're trying to collect data, but also see what they do to the car balance and how you might optimize the car to suit them. But in reality, this tyre isn't designed to be faster. It's not designed to be better in that regard. It's designed to be more durable. It's a heavier tyre with more structure in there. And it's basically a response from Pirelli to some of the issues that we'd seen at Silverstone. That comes about because as we add performance to the car, the loads go up and up. The tyre has to withstand all of that load, and it's very difficult to deal with that if Pirelli are not able to change the tyre. Yes, they weren't quicker. There is a bit less grip at the front. It creates a bit more understeer, and some of that we'll be able to get back with setup changes and fine tuning. But in reality, the 2021 tyre will not be as fast as the 2020 tyre. Thank you very much for all your questions, and we'll be back next week to answer questions from the Sakhir Grand Prix.